Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Max. I'm your host. This is Coffee. So, today I want to talk about finding your voice as an instrumentalist, and I think this is crucial to be able to play music for a long time and not burn out and to feel like you're doing the right thing. And it's something that a lot of people overlook. So, for example, as a drummer, there's this insane pressure to learn everything from metal to jazz and everything in between because of all the stuff that you see on social media and all of the drummers out there posting videos of all kinds of different stuff. And one thing to keep in mind is not all of those drummers can play everything, and that's really important to remember. So, my challenge for you, and we'll talk about this at the end of this video too, is to find the three genres that speak to you the most. And I don't care if they're metal, Latin, and reggae. If those make you happy to play for whatever reason, then pick those three. But try and pick only three that you really love to play. And try to narrow them down as much as you can. So don't pick something like alternative, because that could be anything. Write down some bands, write down some influences, but pick three genres that you love. So for many years, I played in cover bands. It's great money, and we got to play in really cool locations. We play a lot of weddings, we play a lot of private and corporate events. So it was great pay, and it was cool to be around that kind of people. Unfortunately, your friend Max here does not like playing covers, and I learned that the hard way. I played this one gig with a band. It was a 3-hour set, and we played maybe 3 or 4 originals the whole time. And I played that, and I finished the gig, and I was walking to my car, and I swore to myself I would never play another cover gig. And I could be persuaded, I'm not trying to lose any gigs or anything like that, but the types of covers that we were playing made a big difference too. And for me, it was songs that I had played a million times at weddings and different events, and I just felt so burned out. Here's my opinion on cover bands, and you can agree with me or not. I think that to try and match a song that is already so perfect, to try and match that live is a lost cause. And that doesn't mean don't play covers, but in my opinion, if you're going to do a cover, you should play that cover in your style, however you think you could play that cover best. For me, playing in these cover bands where we're trying to match every single detail live and try and get the sound right, it's a interesting challenge, and I understand the appeal, and I understand why the audience would love it because it's cover songs. But for me, it's like, just play the song on a radio, Play the song on a laptop, get a DJ. If you're going to try and get it that close to the original, play the original, because the fact of the matter is, no matter how good you are, it won't be the original. So anyway, I decided that I wasn't really into playing only covers all night. As a drummer, I think it's just not the most fun you could be having at a gig. And so I haven't played a cover gig since, and it's been a lot of original stuff. It's been a lot of singer-songwriter stuff, and I've really enjoyed that. So that's one thing that I finally defined. It took many years of drumming that has allowed me to feel so much happier playing. And that definition is just that I would rather play original music. So it's not a genre, it's not a style, and it's not an environment. It's just a type of music. So think about that stuff. Think about the energy that you want to be playing. Think about the energy that you have as a person, and see if you want something that is that same energy or something that contrasts it, complements it. So think about your environment. If you're in a wedding band, you're going to be playing at weddings, which means you're getting there pretty early to set up. In most cases, you're getting good pay, which is awesome. It'll be a new location most of the time, right? You're not going to be playing the same bar. And there's going to be a certain level of formality. So you're probably going to have to dress up. On the contrary, if you're playing bar gigs, You show up however you want. You're not going to get paid as much, most likely. And you can even have a couple of drinks if that's your thing. For me, it's not. If that's okay with your band, it's just a much less formal, much more relaxed environment. And it kind of blows my mind how many different environments there are. So we have bars and restaurants, pubs. We have listening rooms, which is a totally different environment. We have weddings. We have private events. We have cruise ships. A lot of my friends from Berkeley are on cruise ships. We have festivals, and we have general venues, which are made for the music. And then, the one I didn't talk about yet is the studio. And that's a totally different ballgame. So just like I asked you to pick your 3 favorite genres, I want you to pick your 2 favorite environments. So maybe it's studio and wedding gigs. Maybe it's playing in pubs and restaurants for fun cocktail hour and corporate events. But pick 2, maybe 3, write them down, and put them next to your 3 favorite genres that you love to play. The last thing to think about is the energy that you yourself put out and the energy that you want to be in when you're performing. So think about that as well. Think about if you want to be in somewhere that's crowded or if you want to be in a kind of quiet studio environment, and think about what kind of energy you think you have when you perform. And that could be different at different times of day too. Now, why is this so important to be able to find your voice as a musician? Well, for me, if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't be playing to this day. I probably would have quit. And the reason for that is this burnout that happens. And some of you have experienced that, some of you haven't. I'm hoping to do a video on that soon. It's terrible. It's awful. I came back from school and I didn't want to play drums for 6 months, 8 months. There's just no life in them for me. And luckily now I feel drawn to the drums, and it's an automatic thing. I feel drawn to music. But it took a lot of practice to get back to that point. Not literal practice, but mental practice of approaching that instrument differently, approaching music differently, and a lot of patience. So to avoid this burnout, I think it's so important to find what you want to do as a musician and make sure that you're doing what you want to do. And with most things, there's 2 sides to this. So a lot of you will say, oh, well, I'm going to take every gig that comes to me because it will pay. And to that I say, sure, fine, but make sure that you're not getting hired only for the gigs that you don't want to play. The more wedding gigs you play, and if you're not into it as much, the more wedding gigs you're going to get just by nature. So be very picky about what you do. That's my advice to you. Be very, very picky. And only take something if it... So there's a great rule for this, and it's the 2-3 rule. I think originally it's money, people, and music. I've heard exposure, music, and experience. There's all kinds of different ways to modify it, and I would encourage you to make your own 3. So the 2-3 rule means that you do not take a gig unless it fills 2 of the 3 requirements that you set up for yourself. For example, if we're talking about money, people, and music, that means that the gig must, out of these 3, select 2 of these, cross out 2 of these. Money, that means it pays well. It's a fair rate for what you're doing. The people that you're with are awesome. You love hanging out with the people that you're playing with. You love them as musicians and as human beings. And 3, the music is fun. You enjoy the type of music that you're playing. So for example, if I got a gig that didn't pay anything, but I was playing with people that I loved and playing music that I loved, I would take that gig because it's something that was fun for me. So for an exercise for you, pick 3 things that must be checked off before you take a gig. And if 2 of those 3 are checked off, then you take the gig. If only 1 is checked off, you don't. And it's a really easy template for you to follow. So for me, my 3 categories are money, experience/exposure, kind of the same thing, and fun. So it's similar to the original, but the experience exposure category I think is really important for me because if there's a gig that I don't want to take because it doesn't pay great, for example, but I know that if I play this gig, I'll get a bunch of really good gigs after it, and I know the exposure is great, then I'll take it. Or along that same tier, if I know that I will learn something from that gig that I can't learn anywhere else, then I'll take that gig most times. So money, exposure, experience, and fun. Those are my So now for you, you have, for homework, pick your 3 favorite genres that you love playing. Pick your 2 or 3 favorite environments that you love being in, and define your energy as a musician and as a person. And finally, write down your 3 categories that must be checked off for you to take a gig, the 2-3 rule. And brainstorm on that, and I think you'll find exactly where you need to be. So, thank you so much for joining us. This is Coffee with Max. And please, if you have an idea for a video, if you have something that's bothering you, something you want to find out more, leave it in the comments. I'd be happy to answer your questions.